Well, firstly, I think it's really important, and as I think this whole House has suggested through the speeches that we've heard, that our country does need more homes, particularly for young people. I think the most obvious stake that a young person can have in society is ownership of their own property that they live in with their family. But it's really important that government gets this right in their approach. There's much to commend in the government's bill, but there are also a few points I'd really like the Minister to focus on. So firstly is this rural-urban divide that has become quite apparent. My constituency, Bromsgrove in the Villages, is 89% greenbelt. It's to the south of Birmingham, in the north of Worcestershire. In many ways it is a rural idyll. Yet Bromsgrove is seeing the housing target set by government increase by 85% at a time when adjacent Birmingham's housing target is decreasing by over 20%. I will give way.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, because the same thing is true in London. We've seen London housing prices, London housing targets decline for the mayor of London, who actually has not met any of his housing targets, where all of those extra housing numbers have been forced onto the outer counties surrounding London. And I'm not sure if that's actually fair or is going to produce the housing that people need.
I thank my honourable friend, and she makes a great point. And in fact, it leads me to a point that I want to stress to the Minister, which is around intensive urban densification. There's a real opportunity that our country faces if we focus on increasing the number of properties, particularly in larger urban areas, including London, including Birmingham. And for some of the larger towns across many of our constituencies, this is also a great opportunity to regenerate those towns.
Yeah.
I will give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, because he makes a really interesting and powerful point here. And as a fellow West Midland MP, I see that in my own constituency, because, Madam Deputy Speaker, does he agree with me that if we can genuinely regenerate our high streets, our town centres, that's the way of revitalising them? It takes the pressure off the peripheral areas and protects us against actually being subsumed into the cities and the urban areas.
Thomas.
I do agree wholeheartedly with, with my right honourable friend. She makes a very important and pertinent point. And if we get this urban densification right, it is a catalyst for the economic and social renewal of town centres that is desperately needed. I'll make a little progress and then I will give way. But linked to this is a really pertinent importance to focus on the quality and aesthetic of development that is taking place. I've long been a fervent advocate for design codes and the role that locally led placemaking principles can play in determining the quality of an area, the attractiveness of it for future inward investment. And I do believe instinctively that residents across the country are not NIMBY, but I fear that successive governments, including previous Conservative one, including the Labour one before that, have allowed mediocrity to reign. There is a lack of local distinctiveness in development that causes an entrenched perception of NIMBYism to be running throughout the country. So I implore the government to consider reinstating the Office for Place that was disbanded back in July, and think about the importance of those aesthetically based placemaking principles and the role that they can play in promoting positive impacts of development. And linked to that, Madam Deputy Speaker, we've got, I think, an acute need and opportunity to promote smaller, more artisanal developers, particularly those that are focused on developing the vocational skills that are needed to generate the next incoming pipeline of talent to support the house building industry. There are a couple of points in particular that I'd like to make, certainly in relation to my constituency, but I think probably apply to many others across the country. One is around that protection of the Greenbelt. You know, Greenbelt is a technical designation, but to the public at large, it's often considered to be lush open fields and meadows. My constituency has got this very large buffer between Bromsgrove and Birmingham, and it's not a case that residents of Bromsgrove are NIMBY. I don't believe they are, but what they do not want is for the identity of Bromsgrove to be eroded and by virtue become some kind of extension of Birmingham. And I think that identity word, for me, and I know for many of my constituents, underpins the fundamentals that we should be talking about. This is about sense of place, it's about the lifestyle that people identify with. When I think about constituents from my area who have probably grown up in Birmingham, they've moved into North Worcestershire. In many cases they've done it because there's an aspirational element to this. They are moving into the countryside and they want to benefit from the countryside that Worcestershire offers whilst being within close proximity to Birmingham and all of the services that it offers. So I'm going to wrap up my comments, Madam Deputy Speaker, but 4 quick points I'd really like the government to focus on. Consider intensive urban densification and the positive role that that can play in delivering housing, particularly where it's needed, particularly where young people live, and the role that that can play in regenerating town centres that are undergoing a lot of change. I will give way quickly.
Morris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you for giving way. It struck me that he's speaking a lot about building where young people live. One thing that really concerns me as a fellow rural MP is that young people are increasingly forced out of our rural communities. Does he not recognise that actually we need to look at intelligent, targeted, moderate house building within those communities to preserve them for the future and preserve their demographic future?
Bradley Thomas.
He makes a very good point, and it's one that I don't disagree with. We've got to strike a better balance. That's the point that I'm making. And this leads me to my second point, which is around infrastructure. Bromsgrove has suffered a lot of development in recent years. It's not had the infrastructure that's gone with it. But if we want to strike the right balance, enable young people to stay in communities where they grow up, particularly rural ones, we need to have housing there, but we also need to recognise that rural areas cannot do all of the heavy lifting.